It's really difficult at the moment to try and decide on a brand new dual sport. There's so many fantastic options out there. So how the hell did I decide on the Honda CRF300L compared to all its competition in the dual sport world? Well, today I'm going to do exactly that, go over each of its main competitors and talk about why I chose the Honda over those motorcycles. But I wanted to really focus on the major factors that made me decide on the Honda over each of these bikes, rather than getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty of how many extra centimeters of travel or tiny tenth of horsepower one has over the other. I wanted to talk about the big obvious points that really helped me make that snap decision and go for the Honda CRF300L. This one's a very simple answer. The KLX300 is not sold here in Australia, so I simply can't get my hands on one. And that's a big reason why I'm riding red instead of green. It's not any kind of brand loyalty or anything like that. You guys know my history of bikes. I chop and change all the time. I go where the value or the opportunity is. And I simply don't have the opportunity to buy a KLX300. But what if I did? Let's talk about that. Well, I've ridden the KLX250S because that is available here. And as a package, it's a great bike. And the suspension, I would say, is a little bit better than the Hondas. But overall, it really is splitting hairs between both of these bikes. They're very evenly matched. I will throw the specs up as I'm talking to try and help you out. But what I would say about these two bikes, if you're comparing them, is try and get a test ride on both. As ultimately, when things are so close like this, I find that a lot of things come up when you go and get a leg over the bike, or even just to go sit on it in the dealership, because this will tell you many things, not only about the bike, but of the experience of going into the shop. How do the people there respond to you? Is one dealership closer to you than another? Is it easy to get parts on a particular bike over another in your country? Have a chat to the guys at the parts section and the guys that book in for servicing. See what they're like to interact with, because that's who you're going to be seeing on the regular. That dealership experience is very important and has been the decider for me in the past. Other things to consider is the aftermarket. Is it easier for you to get your hands on aftermarket stuff? If you're trying to weigh up between both, they're very evenly matched. Get a leg over both and see which one gives you the tingle in the jingles the most. I owned one of these for 5 years and I cannot say enough good things about this bike. But the one reason that made me decide on the Honda over the 250R was basically the torque. The suspension on the WR250R is quite fantastic. The only thing I really had a gripe with there was the rear suspension does need a little bit of attention, particularly with the rebound dampenings, but the torque just wasn't there, particularly in the slow stuff. It's happiest right up in the rev range, balls to the wall, really having a lot of fun up top. That motor loves to be revved. And when you're going through the slow, technical, single track kind of stuff, sometimes that just isn't an option. You need a little more torque. Or in deep sand, if you start to get bogged a bit, having a little bit of torque to grunt your way out of it really helps. And that's where the 300L does have a noticeable advantage over the WR250R. It has that little more torque to get myself out of those situations, and it also sits on the highway a little bit better as well. That extra torque and the fact that the horsepower comes in lower in the rev range really helps on the highway experience. Sitting out on the highway, I felt a little safer. It feels like the bike is a little bit quicker, and it also can hold higher speeds. That was another thing that the WR, while great for a 250, it really does start to show its weakness when you're comparing it to the 286 cc's of the Honda. It's not night and day difference, but it is a significant improvement in the seat feel. So those were the real two factors. The other thing that really helped me decide as well is I'd already had the WR250R, so I really wanted a new experience and a whole new journey to go on. That was also very appealing. That's why I went with the Honda over the 250. Now, if you want to see a really detailed video, I've done a 15-minute video breaking these two bikes down. Check that out wherever it pops up right now. By all accounts, this is probably the Halo dual sport bike. We've got fantastic WP suspension, class leading in the dual sports. Power wise, this just leaves everything in the dust as well. And components on this bike, it can't compare to anything else on the market. It simply is the best dual sport for the money. That's the big thing here, is the money. That's what kept me away from the KTM the most. The CRF300L was $8,000 out the door right away, no more to pay. Whereas with the KTM, I could have bought two CRF300Ls and had enough money to modify both of those bikes for the cost of one KTM690 or Husqvarna 701. That cost is really prohibitive. If you're in a stage of life where the kids have left home, you've been working for a while, or you've got a job that just pays you an awful lot of money and you've got a big expendable budget, the KTM690 makes a lot of sense. It's really hard to walk past all that performance. But for me, I've got a mortgage, I'm trying to build my life, me and my wife are just starting out on our careers, and spending that much on a motorcycle in this time of my life really doesn't feel like a smart life decision for me, so the Honda made more sense. The other reason is I've had mates with the KTM 690. What I often hear as a comment from KTM owners, at least average riders that are willing to admit this, is it's very hard to access all that performance and power if you're an average rider. It's great to have, puts a big smile on your face, but 9 times out of 10 in the technical riding, you're really not accessing any of that performance other than the suspension. If this was 2017, I probably would have strongly considered it, but I had to have a long break because of health reasons, and all those skills faded away over the 3-year gap that I had. I'm kind of starting almost at square one, so the Honda makes sense. I can access and ride that bike far better, and it makes me feel confident. Having all that power and performance would be wasted on me. The other consideration here that is splitting hairs a little bit is the weight between both these bikes. The CRF300L is roughly 142 kilograms wet, whereas the KTM 690 is around 158 kilos wet. That is a significant weight difference. I will point out that you do get far more fuel on the KTM, with it having roughly 13 liters over 7.8 liters on the 300L, so you do get more fuel, but that weight difference was on my mind a bit. Ultimately, for my stage of life, with my needs, my riding skills, and my current stage of fitness and health, the 300L Honda made more sense. There were a few significant things that led me to decide to move on the DRZ400E, despite the amount of criticism I knew I would get for doing it, because, well, DRZ riders are very, very loyal to the yellow brand. I did ruffle a few feathers when I did it, and I'm gonna ruffle them again by saying why I moved it on. This is going to be an oversimplification, but it's the only way I can do this without being a 20-minute video. If you want that video, check out my detailed breakdown between both of these bikes and my ownership experience. But basically, it was the refinement difference between these bikes. The 300L feels so much smoother, ergonomically it felt better, and it's far less fatiguing to ride. The DRZ is very loud, much more vibey, it rattles more, it's just a very old school experience, and it fatigues you after hours and hours of riding, whereas the Honda, I felt far fresher with the same amount of riding, and that's very important to me. A bike I can ride for longer is always going to be more appealing to my style of riding, so that was very important. The other really big decider for me was that 5-speed gearbox on the DRZ is very limiting. It's just a fact that 6 speeds is now the standard, and a 5-speed really can't compete. If you're an old school guy and you grew up used to 5 speeds, it might not be much of a gripe, but for the modern day dual sport rider, 6 speeds is just far better. It means you can sit on the highway comfortably while still having the 1 to 5 gears be very close ratio for that off-road experience. You just don't have the same amount of gears to work with the DRZ. It was still nowhere near as good as a well set up 6-speed, particularly the CRF300L. They've really nailed the ratio on that 6-speed gearbox and how it interacts with the engine. It's just a really fantastic match made in heavens. It's very hard for the 5-speed DRZ to compete with the rideability of the 6-speed with that 300cc motor on the Honda in my eyes. The other thing as well is the cost if you're looking at them both new currently. Here in Australia, the DRZ400E, when I bought it, was $9,000. $9,500, which was $1,500 more than the CRF300L. That I was willing to live with, mainly because the DRZ does have some better aspects like the suspension and the power and lighter weight. But now the DRZ has jumped up in price, so it's over $11,000, which is significantly more than the 300L. And I think with that price disparity, you really aren't getting much more for your money. So that is another reason, if you are looking at them both new, that the 300L could make a lot of sense. Of course, that's a different story when you're looking at a second-hand DRZ where there's plenty of them available with modifications. But for me, it was the 300L that was the clear choice. So why didn't I get an enduro bike over the 300L? This was mainly due down to two things: cost. Enduro bikes are far more expensive, and also my riding ability. As I said, I was coming back from health problems. I'm still dealing with those a little bit, but it is something I have to factor in. So the fact that I lack the skills and I lack really the fitness to be able to do those really hard enduro rides, it didn't make sense to spend 2 and a bit more times the money on an enduro bike in this stage of my life. And the value for money, all the accessories, the dealership experience, and the fact that it was very modern, it looks great. The 6-speed gearbox with that little motor is just such a great combination. It's been almost a year and this bike just keeps on surprising me. I thought the honeymoon period would wear out a long time ago, but I'm still just as excited to hop on the bike today as I was the day I bought it. So if you got this far and you're wondering why I haven't brought up the CRF300 Rally, it's because really in my head it's in a different category. It's more of an adventure bike than it is a dual sport in my tiny little chimp brain. If you want to see that in detail comparison, I've done that video, check it out here, it's fantastic. I go through all the reasons why I chose the CRF300L over the Rallys. And until next time guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up and I'll see you in the next one. Catch you later.